Swiss watchmaker Longines has been crafting watches for over 180 years, so they must be doing something right. Building on their Spirit collection that pays tribute to the golden age of aviation, the Spirit Zulu Time adds to their rich collection of chronographs, divers, and sports watches for the adventurous spirits. If you do the math, Longines has been around longer than Rolex, Tudor, Omega, Tissot, pick your poison. And they're even credited for bringing to market the first wrist chronograph, so there's a laundry list of reasons to get excited whenever they release a new reference. And if you do some digging, you'll even be able to find a photo of none other than Albert Einstein rocking a Longines, the Curvex, which sold at auction for a whopping $596,000 in 2008, which is to say they've been in vogue nearly as long as horology itself. There may be a few reasons why it's not quite a household name, but probably the most obvious is that Longines went head-to-head with Rolex and Omega competing to get a watch to the moon via the Apollo program, but it obviously lost its battle to Omega, whose Speedmaster survived NASA's trials. We digress. Zulu Time in particular is aviation speak for UTC, or Universal Coordinated Time, which in watch speak simply translates to GMT. But this moniker sure adds in a bit more character than the Longines Spirit GMT if they had decided to stay a bit more conservative with the naming convention. In our opinion, Spirit Zulu Time is way cooler than GMT. So let's get right into it. Can the new Spirit Zulu Time live up to its heritage? Let's find out. We'll forgive you just this once if you haven't heard about Longines, because we know that you'll be hooked right after we talk about the Spirit Zulu Time. It's a true statement piece, and if we're honest, probably one of the best representations of the brand at large. Here's what struck us first about the new GMT from Longines. First, the Spirit Zulu Time basically takes the existing Spirit and adds in a true GMT, or what the pros may colloquially refer to as a traveler GMT. You get to move the hour hand independently, which is by far the quickest and easiest method for adjusting your time zones during travel. Second, all the great line items about the Spirit carries over to the Spirit Zulu Time, most notably the sharp dial design details like the diamond-shaped indices, winged logo, and gilt-framed Arabic numerals and hands, not to mention the beautiful alternating finishes across the case. Third, the addition of the timing bezel screams tool watch even more than the original Spirit, giving the Zulu Time a markedly tough appearance. And here's the absolute best part. The GMT addition from the Spirit to the Spirit Zulu Time only adds in a mere $50 to the price tag for the versions that ship with the standard stainless steel bracelet. Insane. And you really only have two other competitors at this price bracket between 3K and 5K, and those would be the Tudor Black Bay GMT and the previously reviewed Tudor Black Bay Pro, that both build in true GMTs. However, you'll spend about $1,000 to $2,000 more on each of those compared to the Longines Spirit Zulu Time, so the value here is absolutely undeniable. Now let's get into some specs. Now, the Zulu Time's case adds on 2mm in diameter over the 40mm diameter of the Spirit, and this is probably the most and only contentious part of the release. It wears a little large, or at least very true to size, which will be large for most folks at 42mm, especially with a 49.3mm lug-to-lug and an even 14mm thickness. Its stature is in no small part because of the bidirectional rotating bezel that hangs over the main case, if only by a fractional amount. But it also houses the same anthracite-colored ceramic bezel insert as the dial background, making the top presence feel visibly large, dimensions aside. The case itself is fully brushed with hints of high polish at strategic points. We really enjoy how the lugs sharply angle toward the bracelet when viewed from the top. It gives the main case a very stealthy appearance. The conical screw-down crown is yet another distinct feature that carries over from the Spirit. It'll remind you of IWC and other pilots' watches, but for very good reason. Speaking of, both Longines and IWC have significant aviation history, and this crown shape is certainly a trademark of a pilot's watch. Although this unit isn't nearly as prominent as the ones you'll find on something like the IWC pilot's watch Mark 18 or 20 for example, it adds in distinct character nonetheless and protects against water incursion up to 100 meters. On the backside, the gently sloping screw-down caseback uses 6 rivet-like screws and goes a long but subtle way to keep the aviation MO present without the theme coming across as kitschy or corny. The composition of the circular embossed text and the prominent central logo is also incredibly well thought through, design-wise. Most manufacturers have a surprisingly hard time with this and seem to put little thought into the caseback details, especially for non-exhibition units since it lives against the wrist anyway. Although it won't see as much light as the dial itself, it is still an important consideration, and in our opinion, when paying upwards of $3,000 to $5,000 for an entry-level luxury piece, details are everything. Longines released 2 different dial variations. The first is almost beat for beat like the existing Spirit, with an anthracite background and gold-polished hands and frame numerals. Ours switches the colorways and finishes with silver polish and a blue-tip GMT hand. In our opinion, the most versatile is the silver colorway, as it's capable of being dressed down far better than the gold finish for everyday wear. And on the dial, there are sharp edges no matter where you look, like the case. The indices above each applied Arabic numeral form small symmetrical diamond shapes, the numerals themselves are rendered in a crisp typeface and filled with plenty of lume, and each hand tapers off to an acute point. Okay, probably the second most contentious dial feature, apart from the larger case size, would be the addition of the 5 stars above the 6 o'clock. In photographs, they're certainly prominent, and if it doesn't sit right with you, just know that they're far less pronounced in person, and only catch the light at key angles since they're finished similar to the hands and indices. Now, the addition of the GMT isn't the only comparison that may be made against the Black Bay Pro, or GMT. The finish is strikingly similar, which is a great thing if you're already inclined toward the Black Bays but want to reserve some funds for a rainy day and still walk away with your head held high. As for the Spirit Zulu Time, the only place the comparison strongly deviates would be the placement of the date window, at the 6 o'clock versus the Black Bay GMT's 3 o'clock position, and a blue or gold tip GMT hand over a fully colored bright red, gold, or even yellow unit that Tudor builds in. You're also going to be paying $1,000 less than the Crown's little sibling for an extremely solid movement with a true Traveler's GMT. Longines uses the caliber L844.4 as the engine under the hood, and it boasts some serious specifications that rival watches near double the price, and here's why. First, a self-winding or automatic mechanical movement that beats a 25,200 vibrations per hour or just about 3.5 Hz. Second, a 72-hour power reserve made possible in part by a monocrystalline silicone balance spring. Third, in-house manufacturing by one of the oldest Swiss heritage brands. Fourth, a COSC master chronometer rating for precise timekeeping. And lastly, the inclusion of a true GMT that allows the hour hand to move independently for on-the-fly time zone adjustments via the crown. And if you're not sold, as we already said, for just over $3,000 you get in-house manufacturing, top-tier specifications, and sharp, striking good looks, all backed up by Swiss heritage. It almost feels like you'd be drastically overpaying for anything else. Sorry, Tudor. Longines touts a pioneering spirit in their mission statement and catalyst for the Spirit collection, and this innovation is also mirrored in how the watch feels on the wrist. The Spirit Zulu Time feels uncharacteristically light for the stately 42mm diameter. In terms of the finishing, the vertical brushing extends from the case to the end link onto the bracelet, which tapers slightly from the 20mm lug width to about 18mm near the branded triple safety push clasp, featuring a one-piece deployment mechanism. And although the Zulu Time does have 5 micro adjustment slots, we do have to give a few more points to Tudor on the Black Bay Pro, also a GMT, for the T-Fit adjustment system. But the fact that Longines provides more than 3 here is just fine with us for fine-tuning the fit. We mentioned right at the beginning of this review that Longines must be doing something right since they've been in the business for almost 2 centuries. The Spirit Zulu Time is a perfect encapsulation of their recipe for success as a mix of tradition, heritage, innovation, strategic partnerships, marketing with a focus on storytelling, and exceptional quality control. Is the Longines Spirit Zulu Time for you? Well, we can't make that choice for you, but we think it will probably come down to aesthetic considerations over technical specifications, which we've already laid out in quite some detail, most of which rival the other popular GMTs and at a significantly lower MSRP. Most likely, you're deciding between Longines and Tudor if you're looking for a true entry-level luxury GMT at this price point. So if this is the case, as they're both costly investments for the average buyer, stick with the one that you'd like to look at. Simple, right? Well, not quite. Cutting through the noise, the Spirit Zulu Time is the perfect watch for a more classic, pilots-inspired piece, for anyone with less than $4,000 to spend, who would also make fair use of the GMT function, or for someone who's already been considering the regular Spirit, since the GMT is only $50 more.